The show where there are no penalties, nothing is offside, and everything is fair game. This is The Gloves Are Off.
Hey, sports fans, Lance Phillips, Josh Ryan with you for The Gloves Are Off.
I'm 0-1 in Thumb Wars now.
That's his first Thumb War he's ever played in?
Yeah.
And he lost.
Is that considered play?
No, that was totally not. I might have cheated a little bit too.
Oh.
There's a high probability.
Well, that's not surprising.
No, absolutely not. This week, Bobcats, Rustlers, Jacob Trouba, Ryan Johansson, and Claude Julien. And I guess we'll start, Mr. Ryan, with the Lloydminster Bobcats, seeing as that is the hot topic right now in Lloydminster. Had a critical weekend against the Grand Prairie Storm where they really needed 2 wins, and they did well Friday with a 6-0 win. Saturday, for lack of a better term, they crapped the bed, losing 4-3 to Grand Prairie. Are they done? That's the simple question. They got 5 games left in the season. Of those 5 games, 4 games now because they played Monday in Whitecourt, lost 6-3. Now 4 games against teams that they've gone 1 and now 14 against. Are they done? They're 1 point back of Grand Prairie now.
They're likely done, but
They're
you
done.
can't completely count them out because 1, they haven't played the games yet, so you can't officially say until the games are done. 2, it is just 1 point, and 3, one thing to think about is they play all 4 games at home. Lloydminster has had some good luck in home games the last year or so. I mean, look at the RBC Cup. They managed to put it together in that semifinal.
Totally different team.
So I know it is, but this team has also played better in recent weeks. And overall, they played relatively well this past week against Grand Prairie. I mean, certainly well on the Friday night. So are they probably done? Yeah. I mean, they missed their best opportunity, but they also shut out Bonneville 2-0 just almost a week and a half ago.
Right.
Great performance by McGrath. Think he can take that home momentum into this week. They might be able to pull off something.
I guess the only thing they realistically have going for them at this point against these teams is that they've had decent play of late, and they took Fort Mac to overtime earlier in the season. Beyond that, they're done. There's no scenario that I see them winning one of these last 4 games. These are, especially in Whitecourt, against Whitecourt and Fort Mac, these are the 2 top teams in the AJHL North. Spruce Grove is 3rd, if I'm not mistaken. It's just not feasible. They missed out on an opportunity, and I spoke to Travis Clayton after the game, and I think he realized they missed a glorious opportunity to get ahead of Grand Prairie, who Grand Prairie's last few games are against Sherwood Park and Bonneville, teams they've gone 0-5 against over the course of the season. So not only are the Bobcats in a situation where they may not win, Grand Prairie's not going to either. So, but they need 2 points. They can't settle for a tie won't get them there, or not a tie rather, an overtime loss won't get them there. They have to get a win. That's not going to happen for this team, unfortunately.
I see your point, and it makes total sense. But again, in the defense,
then we're moving on.
Again, in the defense is just if McGrath can pull off the brilliance he's shown at times this year. I mean, most of the year, but a special brilliance at times, and use that advantage of having a large loud building, having all the fan support there. Maybe the guys play with enough energy because of the fan support. And again, if maybe they can get that 1-0, 2-0 win. It might only take 1 win of the 4 games. Is it a tall order? Absolutely. But is there a chance? I think there is.
It is only going to take 1 win. If they can get 1 win, they're going to get in, because I can't see Grand Prairie winning one of their final 4 games either. About Austin McGrath. Austin McGrath has been outstanding, and that is an insult to, it's an insult to him because he's been that good. He's been incredibly good over the last few games. He earned the team their first 2 shutouts, not his first 2 shutouts of the season, the team's first 2 shutouts of the season against Bonneville and Grand Prairie. And he is the reason that this team is where they are at this point. As a rookie goaltender in the AJHL, he's a good goaltender on good teams, and he's a great goaltender with the Bobcats. He's the reason they're there, and he needs to continue that play. Unfortunately, they just don't have the scoring to beat these top teams. They've got 2 solid lines, and then after that, the drop-off is steep, and they don't have it. A team that may have it, although they're kind of backing their win, are the Lloydminster, the Lakeland Wrestlers women's basketball team, and they have gone through heartache to get to the point they're at now. Earlier in the season, Romanolin Inocencio was essentially fired from the team for conduct detrimental to the team. Shortly after that, Brooklyn Bortoya walked out on the team. And Nike Lee, who we see on the screen right now, the latest Lakeland wrestler to walk out on the team. She left with 2 games left in their season. What is going on here with some of these players and not living up to their expectations?
Well, I think it's hard to say exactly what it is because a lot of it's speculative, but the things we can point to is just that Inocencio, again, was put off the team because of conduct detrimental to the team. And her, Bertoya, Nike Lee are all friends, so there's certainly a theme of like those 3 have some bond together, so maybe the reasons they all are not with the team is related. Also, there's the California connection because both Lee and Inocencio are from Oakland. But yeah, it was. I mean, we talked to Coach King; he was taken aback, and so were the players.
The players were mad
that Lee's decision came the final week of the season because I can understand you're in a bad situation, or in your view, a bad situation, and you want to get out of it. Say somewhere in November, December, even that halfway point in the season, like that's not unheard of. A player deciding I'm just not going to go forward with the rest of this season. But to do it with 1 week left, the final home games of the year,
when you're fighting for a playoff spot,
and just to kind of announce out of nowhere that it's happening, I mean, it's not something you see every day. And I think it's safe to say that having lost a number of players from California over the last year or so, I guess his California experiment hasn't worked out very well.
That experiment has failed, and I just. Talking to a couple of Nike's teammates, not thrilled with her decision to leave the team 2 days before their final 2 games of the season. These girls are fighting for their playoff lives at this point. They're probably going to get in because Augustana, as we mentioned before, is not going to beat Nate or Concordia. So they lost their first game at home this past Friday and then came back and beat up by 40 points, beat Grand Prairie by almost 40 points. So they're backing their way into the playoffs, essentially, and they're probably going to make it. But it doesn't bode well for a team that's trying to win some games, trying to solidify some stuff for the future, and you've got players that are backing out at the end of the year. It's not right. And I can't imagine that Chris King will be experimenting in California anytime soon.
No, probably not after the way the last couple of selections have worked out. Especially to the other thing when you talk about her teammates not being thrilled, regardless of whether there is a beef with the coach or not, you still would, you'd think, have a loyalty to the teammates as well. And to think that they couldn't have been toughed out for another 2 weeks is a little bit bizarre because now you've suddenly left the other girls on the team in a situation where they have to now duke it out and blood and tears, sweat, all of that stuff to get through those final 2 games, which they did. I mean, 7 players in their lineup and they still won. So it is encouraging at least that going forward, Coach Chris King will have to revamp the roster a little bit, focus on recruiting players from other guys or other places, and at least knows that the group he has now are a pretty hardworking group and they're bound to get even better next year.
I think they may have found their identity over the weekend. Coming up on The Gloves Are Off, Jacob Trouba, nasty hit, minimal suspension. We're talking about that next. Welcome back, Lloydminsterites. Is that a word? Lloydminsterites? Is that people?
It is now.
It is? Okay, well, I think it is. Lance Phillips, Josh Ryan with you inside The Gloves Are Off set, discussing Jacob Trouba. And Jacob Trouba delivered what I would call an absolutely unfathomable headhunting hit on Mark Stone in Sunday's 3-2 win against the Ottawa Senators. And if you look at Rule 48, this is an absolute, you cannot hit the guy's head first. You can't do it. And Jacob Trouba was assessed a 2-minute minor on the play, which isn't incorrect, and was given ultimately in his hearing a 2-game suspension. Right or wrong?
I'm leaning towards right the more I've looked at the hit. I know we have a disagreement on it. I do think that there is the automatic hit to the head portion. I don't think he was head hunting, as you suggest. I think the more I've watched the tape, I think it's a reckless hit and it's a late hit, But part of that is because with the forward going down low helped contribute to that. And two, he just executed the hit later than he should have. And that resulted in the clipping of the head rather than trying to catch him on the body. So it was a poor hit. It was a late hit, a badly executed hit, and one that deserved to get suspended. But again, based on watching it a couple of times in a row, and that he's a first-time offender. It's not that he's been suspended repeatedly for headhunting before. I think they could have given him maybe another game or two, but I don't think this was one that deserved a 5 to 10 game suspension.
Would you agree that long-term cognitive problems and concussions are a problem in the NHL?
Well, I suppose I would, but
Okay.
that's a risk you take from playing the NHL as well.
But you would agree that there's an issue there. And you would agree, would you agree that the NHL has an opportunity to correct that problem?
I think they've taken steps to correct that, actually. I think.
But
they're
are they
moving in the right
taking
direction.
enough? Now, there's certain things that go along with this penalty, with this 2-game suspension, because you have the collective bargaining agreement factors into this. You know, they can only be suspended for a certain length of time. As you mentioned, previous offenses are taken into account. The length of time the player, as in Mark Stone, is out with an injury is taken into account. So, unfortunately, 2 games in the eyes of the NHL and the collective bargaining agreement are correct. But actually receiving 2 games for the hit, it's worth way more than 2 games. If the NHL and the players are serious about eliminating this type of thing from the game, this has to be in the next collective bargaining agreement, that 2-game suspensions are not even on the board. These types of hits need to be a minimum of 10 games. A minimum of 10 games if you are serious about removing this stuff from hockey, and it needs to be removed from hockey.
Well, I would say to that then, one is that in order to have it as a minimum of 10 games, you do need to start to have that collectively bargained. 2 is that I don't think this particular type of hit happens that often anymore.
It happens very often.
This season we've seen less of it. I know we've had other suspensions, but there's been less instances of a guy's clipping another guy in the head. And again, from watching the replay, the more I've watched the replay, it just to me comes across, at least from my view, that it's a guy executing a hit poorly and late, and it becomes a worse hit than it was intended. And unfortunately, that's going to happen a little bit in hockey. Whereas you obviously see it as.
But it doesn't need to happen in hockey.
But it's a fast sport. That's going to every once in a while you're going to have a hit where someone executes something poorly or loses their head a little bit in the moment. You're going to have these freak things happen. I think this hit is starting to dissipate a little bit, but it's still going to pop up because the game's just too fast. The guys are too big.
Here's the thing, though, is that these types of hits are not freak hits. They're reckless hits, as you stated. They're reckless hits because the game is fast and somewhat reckless.
But freak hits.
It's not a freak hit because those headshots are very, very common. They're not going away. In fact, if anything, they may be getting a little bit worse. And they're not freak hits because the guys are being reckless. That doesn't make it freak, it makes it reckless. And if these penalties become more serious, players are going to have to slow down. They're going to have to slow down when they encounter these types of situations.
Are we not down in terms of suspensions from last year? Are we not down on headhunting instances from last year already?
I don't know. Are we down because, is it down because they actually there aren't as many head hits, or is it down because the NHL just isn't giving out as many suspensions?
I'd be inclined, from the more I've seen people discuss it, certainly, and this is obviously flawed, but my own eye test is that it has been down a little bit because of the steps they've already taken. Can it get better? I agree with you. It should get better. But I don't think this is indicative of this is a widespread problem that needs to be fixed instantly. I think this is a byproduct of we're slowly starting to see less of this, and hopefully we will continue to see less of this.
Well, I don't know if we're going to see less of it until the NHL and the Players Association man up and build this into a collective bargaining agreement that, hey, these are going to be minimum penalties for these types of hits. And this could go on for an entire show.
That's true.
We could talk about this for an entire show. Let's talk Ryan Johansson, though. Ryan Johansson is now a member of the Nashville Predators. He was previously a member of the Columbus Blue Jackets. And in his first return to Columbus, he was upset that he was not given a video tribute. He said, "I was a little disappointed they didn't put anything on the video board to say thank you or anything like that. I think we all knew who made that call, but whatever." And that person he's referring to is none other than John Tortorella. And are we really making this point that I'm concerned that I didn't get a video tribute on a board. Is this guy for real?
I mean, apparently he's for real because he decided to talk about it.
What do you make of this?
Well, and I think I had to actually look up,
Insane.
okay, so is he relevant to Columbus? Admittedly, Columbus has a short history as a team in the league. They haven't had a lot to cheer about either. I mean, what, 2 playoff appearances? But you can also say that looking at his career, he only had 2, maybe 2.5 relevant seasons in the NHL. And in those,
he's a pretty good player.
And he was a pretty good player, but those were only 2 relevant years. This isn't a case of even a Marty Jelena where he was in Calgary for 4 years and became beloved by the fan base. This isn't a case of a guy who was there for 10 or more years where you usually get those tributes. He's there for 2 years, and he was pretty good, and there was some contention all the way through that relationship with him and management, not just John Tortorella. So he seems like he's just a little tone deaf here, or at least just a little ignorant of what the perspective of him as a player is in that community.
Why do you care? Play the game.
That's
just
true
go out
too.
there and play the game and worry about the team that you're with and worry about making them a better team and helping them achieve a championship that they have yet to achieve. Worry about that. Don't worry about whether or not you're getting a video tribute on a video board in your return to Columbus.
That's
It's
something
insane.
you usually see that kind of thing in basketball. You don't see that in hockey very often.
Smarten up. That's honestly one of the most ridiculous things we'll see in 2017. I swear to God.
You're fiery today.
I'm fired up about that. It's ridiculous. Claude Julien on the other side. He's with Montreal. What's up, sports fans? Lance Phillips, Josh Ryan. And if you've been following my Twitter feed at Lance Phillips TV, you may have noticed there's a new Gloves Are Offsetter coming. You excited?
Oh, I'm excited to leave this black background. I've been excited for
This
weeks.
is going because this is our last show, and we're pretty pumped about it. So I've been releasing little teasers on my Twitter feed, just kind of showing some pictures of our new set, so you can check that out. March 14th, we'll be on that, and we're super excited about that.
And next week, of course, we're on location. To
Yes.
shoot the-
Next week, we'll be on location at Lakeland College. We'll be talking to the legendary Chris King of Lakeland women's basketball. But next, let's talk Claude Julien. Why don't we? The new, for the second time, coach of the Montreal Canadiens. And Julien made his debut with the Canadiens for the second time on Saturday, albeit in a loss. Does he make this team better, or is this just a bad team?
Well, I think there's probably going to be a short-term bounce. You usually see that with new coaches, right? Where they come in and the team's going, oh, okay, we're motivated. We got to play for our contract. We got to reaffirm the faith that management has in us. And it's not that this hasn't worked before. I mean, they essentially fired Terry and replaced him with Julien in the exact same scenario they did more than a decade ago. Almost the exact same kind of scenario. Although the team at this point has had higher standing than that team did in the early 2000s. He's an accomplished coach. Obviously, he's had some success with Montreal.
It's a bad hockey team.
He's had some success with the Bruins. But as you speak to it, I think there are roster problems. And the big difference last year was Carey Price was unbelievable. They were first in the East.
Right.
They lost Price and they went down the tube. This year, Carey Price has started out pretty good, but he's been kind of middling to average at times.
Nowhere near the Hart Trophy.
Yeah,
winner
nowhere.
he was.
He's a pure human, and that is the basically that's the problem with the Canadiens is their best player hasn't been at his best, and that's key in any sport with any player. If your best player isn't your best player, then you're going to have issues.
We've seen this with Montreal in the past, where they slingshot out of the gate into this first place situation and then stumble for the last half of the season. And we're seeing it again. This is not a coaching issue. This is an issue with a team that is just not very good, unfortunately. And a team that, although they're still in first right now by some miracle, they may not make the playoffs again this year. And I would not be surprised if that happens. And that is not on Claude Julien. And I don't think that it's even on Michel Therrien as well.
Yeah, I do think one thing that Julien will help is he's had some very good defensive teams in the past. Certainly the Canadiens were a decent defensive team in 2004 with him at the helm. And the Bruins, man, they had a couple. I mean, having Chara will also help, but you had some really good defensive clubs there when he won a Stanley Cup. So there is a chance he can bring a little bit of stability to them, regardless of what their roster is. And that should be enough to get them into the playoffs, but I don't see them doing any damage there.
Definitely. There's no way the Montreal Canadiens are doing anything for the remainder of the season.
Very certain.
Coming up next, Fair or Foul, Genie Bouchard went on a date A Twitter date. Hello, Lance Phillips, Josh Ryan, back with you for the Gloves Are Off, Fair or Foul. We're going to start off with Genie Bouchard. Genie Bouchard decided to go on a date, a Twitter date, after she essentially lost a bet during the Super Bowl when a guy named John Gorky, I believe that's how you pronounce his last name, bet that the New England Patriots would come back to win the Super Bowl when they were down by 28 points, or whatever they were down by, 25. And she said, sure, and he won. And they went on a date. Are they going to be a thing? Or they will be a thing, fair or foul?
I'm going to believe in fairy tales and say fair, because, I mean, it's a great story, meeting someone on Twitter, actually turning out to be a relationship. She did say she loves how normal he is, and, I mean, she said yes to a second date.
This is one of the greatest stories, and will be one of the greatest stories of 2017. If this guy and Eugenie Bouchard become a thing, and they're going to, I believe firmly that it's going to work. The ball is in her court for a second date, as it stands right now. And I love seeing greatness happen. We talked about this before. I love seeing great things happen. And this John Gorky could be greatness. He could be greatness, and I think he will be. And I just love seeing things like this. I think these make for great stories. I'm insanely jealous of this guy. But it's a super cool story, and I hope it works out for them.
And I'll say the one practical kind of thing to look at is she said he's normal. Maybe having a normal guy or someone outside the limelight of pro sports and fame was a good grounding thing for her amidst doing the SI shoots and all the publicity she has to do for her job. Maybe that'll help ground her. So.
Listen,
let's root for it.
Our producer's going to be mad because I'm switching gears totally on him right now. But let's quickly hit on Boogie Cousins. Boogie Cousins gets traded to the New Orleans Pelicans. Does it help the team or not?
I think, yes, it does. It's good for Boogie to get out of there. It's good for Sacramento to have Boogie out of there. And he'll be forced to have to play with Anthony Davis. He won't be able to demand as many things. And I think they'll get sick of his act really fast if he gets kicked out of another game. So I have faith that Boogie Cousins is going to make a big difference in New Orleans. 8th seed, tough out for the Golden State Warriors.
Woohoo! Definitely. All right, as we mentioned, this is our last Gloves Are Off show on this old set that we love. I mean, we love it. We've loved it. I mean, it's been around since 2010. The great Carly Agro, I think, got this started. But we're moving on, and we're excited to move on to a new part of our lives, Josh and I together. Hold my hand, Josh. Josh and I together.
This is not at all awkward.
No, it's totally not. Why are your palms so sweaty? Are you nervous? Jeez, man. Listen,
I'm just
before we leave, though, why don't we grab some stuff? Because there's some things on this set that I want. I want to take them with me over to the new set. You want to get some stuff? I'm going to get some stuff. What do you like in here? What do you like?
Well, I mean, I'm a volleyball guy, so I might want that volleyball.
I'm a big Argonaut fan, so I'm going to take this.
Okay, and you know what?
Take this
you know what? I don't need anything else.
This is pretty sweet.
Get rid of this tape. And
take that tape.
Jays are starting up right away here, spring training. My boy Josh Donaldson, hopefully he's going to be healthy. This is definitely
I like this
now.
Lancers jersey. This is pretty good. Yeah?
Yeah,
I'll get
nice
the
jersey.
S removed and the R, and it'll just be Lance. I think that's pretty good. I'm also a big fan of this football helmet.
Pontiacs.
What else do you like, Josh Ryan?
I might grab a ball cap. I could use a new one.
How do you feel about boxing
Lakeland
gloves?
Wrestlers. Yep, that's mine for sure. Does anyone
Josh,
claim this?
Is
I'm a
pretty
lefty.
Solid.
Actually.
This is pretty solid, yeah? This is pretty solid.
It looks like you're reasonably well protected by that thing.
No, for sure. Hit harder. Come on, hit harder. That's pretty good.
That's actually a decent helmet then. I always wanted to have left.
March 14th, the new show coming your way.
I got free stuff.